Mike White, the Pro Bowl, incentives, injuries, predictions, playoff possibilities. We got a lot to cover today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate you all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Folks, welcome in. This will be our last conversation before the Buffalo Bills take on the New England Patriots in Week 18 to close out the regular season, and we've got a lot to get into. Not so much the dynamics of the game, but we do have stuff to do there. I'm going to give you my typical predictions, but I also want to talk playoff possibilities. There's some injury stuff, incentives that are on the line for a lot of Bills players in this game. We have the Pro Bowl teams, but I want to start with this news. Mike White, a lot of information here about backup quarterback Mike White, who's now been signed to the active roster, and the corresponding move is Nicholas Morrow has been released. Linebacker Nicholas Morrow has been released. And so I think there's a lot of layers to this conversation. Let's start with the Nicholas Morrow piece of it. He's a linebacker. He's been released. And the Bills are very thin when it comes to numbers at linebacker. They have Terrell Bernard, Matt Milano, Joe Andreessen, Dorian Williamson, Edefwan Ulofoshio. That's 5 players. That's it. They typically like to carry 6 on the active roster. And here's the thing. They've got 5 on the active roster and none, and if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the air quotes, but none on the practice squad. This is a very clear indicator to me that Lewis Cine is truly a linebacker for this team. I don't think the Bills would go down to literally just 5 linebackers in total. So Lewis Cine on the practice squad, I think you can comfortably call him a linebacker at this point. Although the team keeps announcing him in their press releases as a safety, I think it's pretty clear that he's a linebacker. So that's one big piece of news. And I certainly wonder if Nicholas Morrow is back on the Bills practice squad very soon, or if that's Ilianku is the guy that fills that practice squad spot, because now, of course, with Mike White going from the practice squad to the active roster, you have a spot available on the practice squad. I would anticipate Morrow or Ilianku to fill that spot. Now let's talk about the Mike White piece of this, because there's a lot to glean from this move. Now, Mike White not just signed to the active roster, but he signed a 1-year extension. Mike White is now signed through 2025, just like Mitchell Trubisky. So your Bills quarterback room for next year is mostly set. Josh Allen, Mitch Trubisky, Mike White. Maybe they'll add another guy. Maybe Shane Buechele will be healthy and available. Maybe they'll draft somebody. They'll sign, some lower tier free agent. But I think your realistic contenders for the Bills roster and the practice squad at quarterback is Allen, Trubisky, and Mike White. And obviously the Bills are pretty satisfied with what they've seen from Mike White. The messaging has been very consistent that that's the case. And so maybe the Bills have themselves a nice little answer here when it comes to quarterback depth. Now that's the implications for next year, but there's implications right now. Of course, the Bills Week 18 game against the Patriots, where the result is inconsequential. Of course, Josh Allen's going to go out there, start the game, and continue his consecutive start streak, which I am fully in favor of that happening. But Mike White's on this roster. And so you certainly expect to see a lot of Mitchell Trubisky. Probably most of the game will be Mitchell Trubisky, but you do have a chance for Mike White to get some game reps on Sunday if that's what they want. But also, there's a new rule in the NFL that having Mike White on the active roster puts the Bills in position to take advantage of. Since he's on the active roster, Mike White can become the emergency third quarterback. and he would still be inactive on game day. I'm not talking about this coming week. All right. We know he's going to be active. He'll probably play a little bit. They're not trying to put Josh Allen back into the game after he does his, whatever he does to start. But in the postseason, when you, or at any point in the year, when you roster 3 quarterbacks, one can be designated as the emergency third quarterback who would still be an inactive player, which allows for there to be the typical 48 other players dressed. But that player, and in this case, Mike White, can enter the game if the other 2 quarterbacks, in this case, Josh Allen and Mitchell Trubisky, have an injury or are disqualified from the game for some reason. And so it's a nice little contingency. You certainly don't want to get down to that. Hopefully it doesn't happen. But if it comes down to it, and the Bills are in a playoff game, and Allen goes down and Trubisky goes down, this is your emergency third quarterback. If you don't have him on the active roster, he can't fill that role. And some position player would have to play quarterback to get you through the game. So it's very much a contingency that you bake into what's at your disposal for the postseason. So a lot of layers to this Mike White move, and hopefully that breaks it all down for you. The NFL announced the Pro Bowl rosters this week, and I want to talk about it quickly. And I know that there's a lot of people don't really care about the Pro Bowl, right? You especially choose not to care about it when the players you want to be in it aren't in it. But it's important for contracts. It's important for legacy. And it means something to these players. Like Deion Dawkins said this week during his press conference, he said, I'd much rather be in the Pro Bowl than not. So while it is a popularity contest of sorts, I get all that stuff. It's still meaningful. The Bills have 2 Pro Bowlers, Josh Allen and Deion Dawkins. Those are slam dunks, right? That's in other news, water is wet. Those guys are absolutely Pro Bowlers. But that means that that's it. And there's some things that I take exception with. Let me give you the rest of the list here. First, alternates, and I think you're going to see a lot of this happen. The Pro Bowl is very much a joke. They're pretty much just going and playing dodgeball and having mini games in Orlando. It's not what it used to be. So I think you're going to see a bunch of alternates get called into the event. First alternates, running back James Cook, center Connor McGovern. When we start with Connor McGovern, can we just pause and acknowledge that the Bills absolutely nailed the decision to release Mitch Morse and promote Connor McGovern or move Connor McGovern to center? It's been a great transition. Connor McGovern's been terrific. He was a really good guard. I think he's taken a step at center, and you've seen how the protection schemes have just really evolved the communication. Listening to the other players talk about Connor McGovern, the Bills absolutely nailed that decision. So that's awesome. First alternate at center. James Cook, first alternate running back. I think that's ridiculous. James Cook should have been a first-team Pro Bowl selection. And whenever you do that, you got to decide who you're pulling out. And the guy that I'm pulling out of the AFC is absolutely Joe Mixon. James Cook has 58 less yards from scrimmage this year on 46 less touches than Joe Mixon, but Cook has 5 more touchdowns. James Cook leads the NFL in scrimmage touchdowns. What are we doing? What are we doing here? Cook should have absolutely been in there over Joe Mixon. The Bills don't have any second alternates. Third alternates, DeMar Hamlin. Okay. Fourth alternate, Terrell Bernard. Fifth alternate, Reggie Gilliam, Ed Oliver, Dalton Kincaid, and Spencer Brown. Spencer Brown as a fifth alternate is insane. Spencer Brown probably had a case to be a first-team tackle to go with Deion Dawkins. At a minimum, first alternate. Fifth alternate for Spencer Brown? Are we kidding? But then even greater of an exception I take is with Christian Benford not even being an alternate. What are we doing? Christian Benford has 1,000,000% been a top 5 cornerback in the NFL this season. I don't know how this happens. And I'm sure it motivates guys, all that stuff, right? I get all that stuff. But come on now. Christian Benford playing at an elite level. I think he should have been a Pro Bowler. But to not even be an alternate, not even a top 5 alternate, are you kidding? And then where's Greg Rousseau? What are we doing here? How is Greg Rousseau not even a top 5 alternate? Taylor Rapp. Damar Hamlin's the third alternate, but Taylor Rapp's not. Taylor Rapp's objectively been better than Damar Hamlin. Insane to me. Absolutely insane. One more thing real quick in this segment. There are a number of achievable incentives for Buffalo Bills players on Sunday against the New England Patriots. Now, I'm not telling you that these are all going to happen or whatnot. I just want to make you aware of what's on the line, what achievable incentives exist for Buffalo Bills players against the New England Patriots. And look, some of these guys might be inactive, but I want you to be aware of these things because they're interesting to follow. And as teams position players to go out and get these incentives, it's good for culture. It's good for the locker room. It shows that the team cares about you having the true opportunities to achieve what your contract has laid out. So this is stuff that can happen. So keep this in mind as you're watching the Bills. Von Miller. Von Miller needs one more sack for $1.5 million. Taron Johnson might not play, obviously. He needs one interception for $250,000. Dawson Knox, he has an incentive where if he hits 60% of snaps played, he gets $250,000. He's played 60.5% of the snaps. So if he doesn't go out and play a meaningful amount of snaps, he's going to fall below the threshold and he won't get that $250K. Dawson Knox also 89 yards away from $100,000, 8 catches away from $100,000. Daquan Jones needs half a sack for $250,000. AJ Epinesa, he needs to achieve 60% of playing of snaps defensively for the season for a $350,000 bonus. He's at 58.8%. So you can see him playing a bunch of snaps to get that. He's also 2 sacks away from $1 million in incentives. He has 6. He needs 8 to reach that threshold. Cam Lewis, he needs to play 60% of the Bills' defensive snaps for the season to reach a $450,000 bonus. He's at 56.4%. So you can see Cam Lewis probably playing every single defensive snap. Mac Hollins is 2 catches away from $50,000. He needs 30. He has 28 catches, so 2 more catches to get $50,000. He's 72 receiving yards away from $200,000. Last one is DeJuan Smoot. He gets a $400,000 bonus if he plays 40% of the Bills' defensive snaps. He's at 38.8%. So he's close there. He's also in search of 1.5 sacks. If he does that, he'll get $250,000. So a bunch of incentives on the line for the Buffalo Bills players on Sunday against the New England Patriots. And I wanted to make you aware of those. And all of that information comes courtesy of SpotRack.com. They make it very, very simple to look at contracts and in particular the incentives to see what's on the line for all the players. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk to Dr. Kyle Trimble about the injuries for the Bills entering this game. Also want to talk a little bit about Damar Hamlin and some of what Sean McDermott said there, which I found to be pretty fascinating about, what is expected of him on Sunday and what that means for his opportunities to be a starter in the playoffs. Folks, be sure to stick with me. It's playoff time, and if you're like me, you want to make the most of these final weeks of football action. That's where Prize Picks comes in. If you love football, you want a chance to win real money while watching the games, Prize Picks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. With Prize Picks, you simply pick more or less on player stats like total passing yards or rushing touchdowns for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds, and whether you're looking for a flex play to boost your payout or want to cash out quickly, Prize Picks has got you covered. And with over 10 million members and billions in winnings, it's clear that people are loving this platform. I've been playing for a while now, and I'm having a blast. It's so easy to use, and I love how fast the payouts are. Seriously, I've gotten paid out in as little as 15 minutes when my picks hit, plus weekly promos like Taco Tuesday discounts add even more value to my lineups. Here's a special offer for Locked On NFL listeners. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What do you want your 2025 story to be? Every January brings a new chapter, 365 blank pages waiting for you to fill. If there's a part of your life you want to rewrite or a plot twist you've been craving, why wait? Life isn't about fleeting resolutions. It's about taking control and becoming the author of your own story. Think of therapy as your personal editor, helping you craft the life you deserve. It's not just for crisis situations. Therapy can help you develop healthier coping strategies, improve your relationships, and empower you to be the best version of yourself. Whether you're facing a challenge or just looking for personal growth, therapy is a powerful tool to help guide you on your journey. Whether it's learning how to set boundaries or tackling stress in new ways, therapy can help you develop skills for a better tomorrow. Even if you've never tried therapy, the benefits are clear. Finding someone to talk to and gaining fresh perspectives can make all the difference in navigating life's ups and downs. Write your story with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. I'm joined now by Kyle Trimble. He's a doctor of physical therapy. He runs Banged Up Bills. You can follow him on Twitter at Banged Up Bills. He joins us each week to get ready for the upcoming game from an injury perspective. And Kyle, this is what we dream about. When we talk about we don't want to have much to get into, this is what we're referring to. Two players with game day designations. Let's start with Terrell Bernard, the Bills' starting middle linebacker, team captain. Didn't practice on Wednesday, limited Thursday, Friday. He's ruled out for the game with a quad injury. However, it doesn't sound like this is a very significant deal. What can you tell us about Terrell Bernard?
So his injury was really hard to find on film. It was a surprise on Wednesday when they said that he was going to be ruled out and he's dealing with a leg/quad injury. So with that being on New Year's Day, I had the day off, so I was able to find this and look into it a little bit more. The injury appeared to happen at 9:55 in the third quarter. This is when there was Rapp, Johnson, and Bernard all trying to force, I can't remember who it was, out of bounds, but it looked like Bernard received some friendly fire from Deron Johnson. He tried to stop it. It looked like he needed Bernard in the left quad as they're coming out. And there wasn't anything to come of it. Like, he got right back up, was moving around, was fine. And then Bernard exited along with most of the other stars at the end of the third quarter when it was mop-up duty, when I think it was like 33-0 at the time. So we didn't know there was anything issues, that there was really a concern. And then the fact that they ruled him out that quickly, it was like, okay, let's dig into what was going on. One thing that helped out was AJ Feldman from Newsday out in Rochester. He had confirmed that he saw Bernard get his leg getting wrapped up, and this was before the Amari Cooper touchdown. So that kind of tied into the time frame when this happened, and the fact that he got wrapped up and said, hey, this is an injury. He couldn't confirm the side because so much was going on during the game, but this at least said this is when it happened. That's what matched up when I saw on film. And then we saw Bernard in practice this week from Sal Capaccio. He was moving around okay. There's a little bit of limitations when he was slowing down. If this was a playoff game, he probably would play, and it's something you can get through. But the fact that you have this game that doesn't mean anything for pretty much both sides, except for the Patriots wanting to get the first overall pick if they want to lose. Bernard, if he were to take another hit to the area, there'd be some more swelling, be more pain. He'd be limited, and you would just see him kind of dragging his leg around during the game if he were to try to play through that. Give him the day off, let him get healthy. Is more just a generalized bruise in the area, and not to downplay a bruise, but let him get healthy. He's already been through so much in his career and already the season. So it's great that they have the opportunity to sit him down and let him rest and truly get the time off he needs. And then there's less of a chance for it to linger later on. Now, he's not going to be 100% come wild card week. I mean, there's still going to be a contusion there, but it's going to be less severe and less likely to linger. And if he does take another hit to it, so it's best case scenario for Bernard. And I'd rather have it happen now than next week.
Grass is green, water is wet, and Curtis Samuel is questionable for the game with an injury. So let's just kind of I want to layer together Curtis Samuel and Damar Hamlin. Damar Hamlin doesn't have a game day designation, but Sean McDermott said some things in his press conference on Friday that were pretty telling. He said, Damar Hamlin will play on Sunday and may even play the entire game. And he went into this monologue about how you can't come back and play your first game in the playoffs. You got to have some reps under your belt and an understanding of where you're at and have some game action. And Damar Hamlin's missed several games in a row. And so the reason I bring that up in relationship to the Curtis Samuel conversation is because Curtis Samuel is questionable. He's been limited all week in practice. He's been limited, it feels like, for multiple weeks in practice with his rib deal. And the Bills are rostering Curtis Samuel, and they're choosing not to put him on injured reserve. And you would feel like this is a player that does need some game reps before he's going to be relied upon in the postseason. And the thing about Curtis Samuel as a depth receiver, he doesn't play special teams. He doesn't help this team as a returner. He doesn't cover kicks. He doesn't cover punts. And that makes it a challenging player for the Bills to keep around. And I bring that up because they haven't placed him on IR. They've maxed out Tyrell Shavers and Jalen Virgil in practice squad elevations to make up for Curtis Samuel. Meanwhile, Curtis Samuel's still on this active roster. It's a little bit curious to me as to maybe why there hasn't been a decision to put him on injured reserve, what they're counting on, and what they can honestly expect at this point, given he just doesn't have many game reps under his belt. So I guess what I'm asking for is kind of how you layer that together. What thoughts you have on Samuel, and if you think there's anything to glean from Hamlin's, what McDermott said about Hamlin, because the reality is I think we're staring at an opportunity that Cole Bishop could be the starter next to Taylor Rapp as the guy who has played multiple games in a row, that's gaining familiarity, that's improving every single week. Meanwhile, Damar Hamlin, who did a nice job as a starter this year, hasn't been around, and now it's playoff time, and he's got to prove that he can go.
Absolutely. I think you have to copy paste what McDermott said about Hamlin and apply it to Samuel. I mean, you don't get to miss 2 games in a row and then let's take this game off where it doesn't mean anything. You hope that Samuel has the big playability in the playoffs that he can be unleashed for somehow. He hasn't shown it yet this year, but if he can show it now, that'd be great. So you want to get some reps underneath him. And the rib injury, maybe they've stretched this out a little bit more, knowing that they had the ability to rest him and hopefully get him right instead of it lingering throughout the playoffs and him being less effective than he already is. But yeah, I don't see how he would sit out unless he says, don't play me, which is a whole nother situation in itself there. So I expect him to play this week. I don't know how much he's going to be involved, but get him out there, run the routes, make sure he's well to do everything he needs to do just so he can be ready for the playoffs. Because if somebody else goes down, he's next man up, and we don't want the next man up playing 6 snaps and not being able to catch a ball when it's called upon.
One thing that I want to comment here in our conversation today is the Bills enter the postseason. It's a pretty healthy football team. And looking at injured reserve, the Bills have Balin Spector, Shane Buechele, and Travis Clayton. I mean, that's pretty inconsequential, and it's not really where this team has been in recent years. There's at least been some big-time meaningful player that is out, right? I mean, it's been Micah Hyde, it's been Von Miller, it's been Tre'Davious White. They've certainly had injuries throughout the course of the season, but just a couple of weeks at a time, right? It's not been this catastrophic season where you just have had issues, right? Every team has issues, but you've avoided the big-time injury. Just want to kind of get some thoughts from you on just generally the health of this team, the journey that they've been on, and just your thoughts on where they stand from an injury perspective entering the postseason.
This is the best they've looked entering the postseason since I can remember. I've been doing this since 2017. They've made the playoffs every year outside of 2018 when they drafted Josh Allen. I mean, it seems like we were primed to be moving toward the right direction last year, and then that game against Miami happened, and then more injuries happened against the Pittsburgh Steelers in the wildcard round, and we were just spent by the time we got to the games that really, really mattered in Kansas City. 2021 might have been the best shot. We didn't have Tre'Davious White then. 2022 was the Von Miller, and it just seemed like the luck that goes in the injury management and everything else just seemed like everything started happening at the end, or you couldn't overcome that one final injury. We see that with the Detroit Lions right now. They have so many guys on injury reserve, and they're still battling, and they still have a chance to get that number 1 overall seed. But if they were to lose this weekend, they drop down to the 5th. Suddenly, that's a big, change, and they might not make a deep run like they expect to. So the Bills are in the best spot. It's great. There is a lot of luck that goes into that, but let's just hope that luck continues to trend in the right way so they can get to the AFC Championship game and then have that chance to make the Super Bowl. And I don't think the training staff is doing anything differently. It just comes down to some of the guys aren't getting some of the serious injuries, and the guys that are being dependent upon still continue to go out and play well, and they're not limited too much to the point where they ran out of steam. So it's a great feeling to have, and hopefully they can capitalize on this for another deep run here.
Well, Kyle, it's my full intent to have 4 more conversations with you this year, for the Bills to go all the way to the Super Bowl and to discuss injuries with you every step of the way. But we're not naive. We know that there's an opportunity that the season could end at any point after next week, right? And so before we get into all the gravity of the playoffs, it's been a bit of a tradition here on the podcast that you take an opportunity and share a message to Bills Mafia as you, during the season, become the second most consistent voice on this podcast outside of me. So want to get out of the way here and give you a chance to say anything that you'd like to Bills Mafia before we get out of here today.
Like you said, it's a tradition on the podcast that I say thank you to all the listeners and viewers. I mean, it's really a cool opportunity to come in here and talk with Joe every week. I've developed a great friendship with Joe because of all this stuff, our love, mutual love for the Bills, and just be able to share my professional expertise and talking about the Bills injuries and giving you that detailed analysis that you're not going to find anywhere else. I mean, there's national guys that do this, there's fantasy guys that do this, but very few guys focus on one team. And I'm glad that I'm able to bring the Buffalo Bills injury analysis to, I think, the greatest fan base in all of sports. So I thank Joe for the opportunity to come on every week. It's great to be in the Discord channel every week. I know those guys and gals in there are talking about the GOATs and how much they enjoy them and just all the discussions we have. And it's great that I'm a resource for the people in the Discord community. It's great that I'm a resource for Bills Mafia on all the social media platforms. And I've gotten a lot of opportunities, both professionally, personally, to meet people, do different things, write for different publications. It just, every year this thing grows and it gets better and better. And if you told me back in 2017 when I started this, I would have never believed where it ended up at. And I can only imagine where things continue to go as it continues to grow and get more exposure and just being more knowledgeable about the sport and the injuries and whatnot. So thank you to everybody that watches, listens, just everything else that consumes the content. I appreciate each and every person that reaches out and says thank you on all different social media platforms. And, it's awesome seeing. Go Bills.
All love, Dr. Kyle Trimble, man. We appreciate you so much. Thanks for what you do for not only this podcast, but for Bills Mafia. We are better fans. We understand things better because of what you're willing to share. And with that said, let's do it 4 more times this year.
Absolutely. Go Bills.
The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a win. I love betting on which players will hit the over on stat projections, as a team will cover the spread. I like building parlays. It's thrilling. And not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Folks, we had the Rally on the River at Buffalo River Works, and that property is incredible. So much to do, great food, great drink specials, and just tons of entertainment. Like, it's one of the most unique places I've ever been to. Great place to bring your entire family. And I recently found out that their other location was the first brew pub in Buffalo, the beautiful red brick Pearl Street Grill and Brewery. Pearl Street just remodeled their main floor, so the dining room now converts into a stage for live music after Sabres home games on the weekends and even during brunches. You get live music all year round. And of course, many Bills fans have been to weddings at Pearl Street or Riverworks, and their in-house wedding coordinators make the whole process easy, fun, and totally customizable. Want an elegant, historic wedding with beautiful patios and sunset photos? It's no problem. How about a custom Buffalo Bills themed wedding? If you can dream it up, they can make it happen. This is also true for holiday parties, corporate events, team building, happy hours, and all other types of events. Also, sports fans, you can reserve groups to watch the games on the big screen at Riverworks, or if you're headed to a Sabres game this year, be sure to stop at Pearl Street Grill before, during, or after the game. Enjoy some live music, crispy wings that are now made in tallow instead of seed oils. Hello, that's awesome. Or one of their new OM organic beers. Those are awesome as well. Pearl Street Grill and Brewery and Buffalo Riverworks, the most authentically Buffalo venues, from everything to dinner to live music to your perfect wedding. Visit pearlstreetgrill.com or buffaloriverworks.com. All right, folks. Got a bunch to do here in this last segment. Want to do the predictions. Want to talk about the playoff possibilities and remind you of the contest that we have going on. So I always give 5 predictions on the upcoming Bills game. Obviously, this is difficult. You've got a Buffalo Bills team that is locked into the number 2 seed. And you have a Patriots team that, if they lose, they're the team that picks number 1 in the 2025 NFL draft. So I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you Mac Hollins is going to have 80 yards or anything like that. I'm going to go a different way with these. So I do have 5 predictions for you. Let's work through them. Number 1, I do predict that the Bills will break the record for the most different players with a receiving touchdown in the same season. Right now, they've tied it with 13. They need one more to break it. And I'll parlay this. I think the player that breaks the record is Reggie Gilliam. He's the most logical guy. Get into a goal line situation, bootleg, dump it to Gilliam, something. You can get this, you do a shuffle pass to him. You can get this done. And I know that the Bills are thinking about this. It's important to them. And so whether it's him, I think Brandon Codrington's a sleeper. I think they're going to elevate a receiver from the practice squad. It could be that player. Could be an offensive lineman. But I'm predicting it's Reggie Gilliam. For number 2, I want to predict the inactive players. And when we come back on this, there's 7 of these. I shouldn't have to go 7 for 7 to get this prediction right. But if I get a majority, if I get 4 out of 7, then I'm claiming a win for this prediction. You guys know every game reaction podcast, I always go through my predictions. These are the players that I think will be inactive on Sunday. Terrell Bernard, we know that. He's ruled out. Ed Oliver, Greg Rousseau, Rasul Douglas, Taron Johnson, Amari Cooper, and Deion Dawkins. I think those are your inactive players for Sunday. I leaned into veterans. I leaned into players that I thought were critically important. I leaned into players that really didn't have incentives to achieve. I think it's going to be those guys inactive. And if I get 4 out of 7, I'm claiming that as a correct prediction. Number 3, I'm going to predict the practice squad elevations. The Bills can elevate 2 players from the practice squad, keeping in mind Jalen Virgil, Zach Davidson, and Tyrell Shavers are out of elevations. So it can't be those 3 players. I'll predict KJ Hamler is one of them. Part of the reason I think that Amari Cooper will be inactive, and I think that Curtis Samuel could miss this game. But KJ Hamler obviously can step in. He's been around for a while now. He should be able to fill a bunch of different roles on the offense. If you need someone to take some handoffs, he can do it. I don't think there's going to be room to elevate Frank Gore this week. I could be wrong, but there's just a number of things that Hamler can do for you to get through this game. And he's also a candidate to score that 14th touchdown. So I think it'll be KJ Hamler. The other one I think it will be is an offensive lineman, Richard Garage. The Bills have 5 starters. They have 4 backups. That's the 9 offensive linemen they have. I don't think they want to play their starting offensive line. And so you'll need to elevate someone from the practice squad to get through this game. And I think Richard Garage is the guy that can play some tackle. And so your other candidate from the practice squad would really be Will Clapp, but I don't think Will Clapp can play tackle, and I think they're going to want somebody that can play tackle. And we know the Garage has also been cross-trained at guard, so I think it'll be Garage. KJ Hamler, Richard Garage, my 2 predictions for practice squad elevations. Part of me really wanted to go with a cornerback. Think about a guy like Daquan Hardy, especially because I'm predicting that Rasul Douglas and Taron Johnson are inactive. So I could see it being a corner, but I think they're going to want the offensive line. I think they're going to want the receiver. Number 4, I'm going to predict that Joe Andreessen has the most tackles in the game for either team. I think Joe Andreessen could play this entire game. We know that Terrell Bernard's not going to start, and so who's he going to be at Mike? Are you going to try to put Dorian Williams there? Maybe. But regardless, I think Joe Andreessen plays a ton, and no player for either team has more tackles than him. And number 5, I got to predict that the Bills will win the game or not. I'm going to predict that the Bills win the game. I don't have a lot of convictions behind that. I certainly don't have much of a feel for how this game's going to go at all. But let's not act like the New England Patriots aren't keenly aware that they can have the number 1 overall pick. And it's not that Gerard Mayo, the head coach, or anybody that's playing in the game is going to try to not win. I think everybody that's involved with this game will try to win it. But that doesn't mean that New England can't do a similar thing with their players and get a look at some younger guys. We know that Joe Milton, rookie quarterback, has received some first-team reps this week. I think they want to play him. I think they want to give him some exposure, some game reps. And the reality is with Drake May, he's had a really good rookie season. Why would you want to do anything that would spoil his offseason, where he's not doing anything besides getting the rest that he needs and then preparing for a season? You don't want to expose him to injury. And now Drake May is not spending this offseason getting ready to play quarterback for the Patriots. Instead, he's rehabbing some injury. I think there's a lot to be mindful of there with that situation. And so I just feel like there's probably a reasonable chance that the Bills could win this game. And look, they got a pretty good roster. They have pretty good depth. Mike DeBate said it on the crossover. He's like, I'm not sure that the Bills' backups aren't better than what the Patriots have, at least in terms of who's healthy for the game. So we'll go with the Bills win, but boy, I have zero convictions on that. I want to talk playoff possibilities real quick here. We know that the Bills are the number 2 seed. We don't know who they will play, but we know it will be one of 3 teams. The Bills will host either the Broncos, the Bengals, or the Dolphins. And let me explain how we're going to get to who it's going to be. If the Broncos beat the Chiefs, that's it. The Bills play the Broncos. And Broncos, obviously, rookie quarterback Bo Nix. Sean Payton's the head coach. The story of that team is their defense. Defensively, they're terrific. Maybe the best defense in the league. Great pass rush, great corner and Pat Surtain. It's a good group. We'll talk about them next week if that's who the Bills ultimately wind up playing. But that's the story. They don't have much of a run game. Opportunistic, big play offense, and a great defense. The Dolphins will be the team that comes to Highmark Stadium if the Broncos lose to the Chiefs. And remember, the Chiefs are not playing for anything. Carson Wentz is going to start. There's a good chance. I think the Broncos are like maybe a 10-point favorite in the game. The Dolphins come to Highmark Stadium if the Broncos lose to Kansas City and Miami beats the Jets. Those 2 things happen. Broncos lose to KC. The Dolphins beat the Jets. The Dolphins are coming. And the Dolphins have a ton of injuries, like they always do it late in the season, including Tua Tagovailoa, who's missed last week with the hip injury. He's going to miss this week with the hip injury. We'll see about their offensive tackles. They got a ton of injuries. Jalen Waddle might not go. But if they can beat the Jets, who's a pretty hapless team, right? They're coming, assuming that the Broncos lose to the Chiefs. Then the Bills could play the Bengals. And in order to play the Bengals, Denver has to lose to Kansas City. Miami has to lose to the Jets. And Cincinnati has to beat the Steelers. And the Steelers have plenty to play for. They would like to be the 5 seed. And we'll know on Saturday. The Bengals play on Saturday. So if the Bengals lose, there's no path for them. But if they win, if you get both a Broncos and a Dolphins loss, Cincinnati, Joe Burrow is coming to town. We don't want that. We do not want that. So I think it's going to be Denver. But there's a path. I mean, you could kind of talk yourself into any of this happening. But if Denver wins, it's over with. They're coming to Highmark Stadium, and we'll talk all about that next week. Want to remind you of the contest that we're running. All you have to do is go to the YouTube comments right now and comment Go Bills. That's it. Type Go Bills. You're entered in for a drawing to win your choice of hoodie from the Herd Mentality Shop. I'm wearing one of them right here. We've got a bunch of different designs. We got the Happy Victory Monday to you. We've got the We Have JA17 and You Don't. A ton of good designs in there. You get your choice. All you have to do is comment Go Bills right now. And even if it's not a hoodie on the site, we could take any design and make it a hoodie. So check it out if you want to be part of the drawing, or just go there and get some merch. We have some cool stuff. Again, herdmentalityshop.com. There's a link in today's show notes. And with that, the hay is in the barn. I guess we've done all we can to get ready for the game. We certainly did some different things this week in an inconsequential game, but I'd love to see the Bills win. You get win number 14. The Bills have never won 14 games before in the regular season, and that'd be a fun story to tell and another record that they broke this year to add to the list. So I hope the Bills win. I really do. But I'm not going to act like we did everything we can on the podcast to get ready. We certainly will next week. We'll get ready for whatever team the Bills host in the opening round of the playoffs. All right, folks, that's it. Thanks for being here. As always, I kindly ask that you share, subscribe, rate, and review. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I look forward to catching up with you again after the game.